Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to another edition of MLFA Promises Success Stories. Today's journey begins with Hamid Hayat, born September 10th, 1983, as a United States citizen of Pakistani descent in Lodi, California. Hamid lived in the United States until he was 7 years old, and then between the ages of 7 and 18, he traveled to live with his grandparents in Pakistan. Hamid returned to the United States in 2000 to live with his parents again in Lodi, California. Hamid worked as a cherry picker in the Central Valley agricultural heartland, and Hamid's father worked as an ice cream truck driver. 3 years later, in 2003, Hamid traveled back to Pakistan with his family, where he spent another 2 years on his second stay, returning to the United States in late May of 2005. So we're going to get a timeline here. Now, days after his return, Hamid Hayat was arrested by the FBI agents and charged with providing material support to terrorism. So what happened? Let's take a look at the events leading up to Hamid Hayat's arrest. On October of 2001, FBI agents in Portland, Oregon, interviewed Naseem Khan, a 28-year-old Pakistani immigrant, in connection with a money laundering investigation. During the interview with Naseem Khan, he informed FBI agents that he had regularly observed Ayman al-Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden's second in command, and one of the FBI's 22 most wanted terrorists at the time, at the mosque in Lodi, California, back in 1999. Khan later told the FBI agents that he had also seen 2 other individuals on the FBI's 22 most wanted list in Lodi during 1999. So how did the FBI react to this information? They hired Naseem Khan as a confidential informant and asked him to return to Lodi, California to gather information on suspected terrorist sales. Khan agreed, and he began his work as an informant in Lodi in December of 2001. Approximately 8 months later, in August of 2002, Khan met Hamid Hayat, who was 19 years old at the time, living in his parents' garage. Now, between August of 2002 and October of 2003, Khan and Hayat became friends, and they spoke regularly. Now, according to Khan, Hayat at times spoke approvingly of Islamic fundamentalist groups such as J.A. Muhammad, and indicated that he had respect for their leaders. He also professed, this is according to Khan, that Hamid professed to know and to admire Pakistanis who had engaged in jihad. Some of these people that Hayat knew because they had studied at a madrasa or a religious school back in Pakistan run by his grandfather. And it's a school that Hamid himself had also attended. So Hamid told Khan that his grandfather was such a prominent cleric that after 9/11, Pakistani President Musharraf had sent his grandfather and others to Afghanistan to persuade the Taliban to hand over Osama bin Laden. Hayat also described to Khan a terrorist training camp in Pakistan, which he had seen in a video. When Hamid traveled back in 2003 back to Pakistan, while he was over there, Khan called him from California and encouraged Hamid to go to the terrorist training camp that they had talked about. So the informant is calling him, telling him, why don't you go to that training camp you told me that you saw in a video? Well, Hamid rejected Khan's encouragement and said that he was too lazy and he thought the camp was closed because it had been too hot in Pakistan. So of course, Khan recorded all the conversations, he took notes, he embellished them, and he reported back to the FBI. Now, Hamid's direct interactions with American law enforcement began when he attempted to re-enter the United States on his trip back from Pakistan to the US in 2005. Because on May 30th, 2005, Hamid boarded his flight to San Francisco from Pakistan, but the flight was diverted to Japan because in mid-flight, they found out that Hamid's name appeared on a federal government's no-fly list. So Hamid was not permitted to fly into the US. So they diverted the plane to Japan, took Hamid off, and interviewed him in Japan by an FBI agent who questioned Hamid about his 2-year stay in Pakistan, including, asking Hayat, have you joined a terrorist organization? Have you attended a training camp? Hayat denied joining a terrorist group or attending a training camp while in Pakistan. The FBI agent ended the interview and concluded that Hayat posed no immediate threat and could be permitted to return to the United States. So Hamid left Japan and flew to San Diego the same evening. So much to do about nothing. 4 days later, on June 3rd, 2005, FBI agents interviewed Hamid at his parents' home in Lodi. After again explaining the reasons for his family trip to Pakistan was due to his mother's health and to seek marriage, Hamid again denied having attended any terrorist training camp and stated that he would never be involved with anything related to terrorism and didn't know why anybody would say otherwise. Now, after this response, the FBI agents asked Hamid to come to the FBI office in Sacramento for further questioning. So Hamid agreed. He arrived at the FBI's office in Sacramento around 11 a.m. the following morning on June the 4th. And he began the interview, which turned out to be 4 long, what I would call interrogating sessions. Hayat at first denied having attended a terrorist training camp, but during the second session, he admitted that he had attended a camp for a few days during his earlier stay in Pakistan back in 2000, so before 9/11, where he said he observed and heard weapons training while he was in Pakistan. And in 2003, he himself received pistol training at a camp in Balakot, Pakistan. But in the third and fourth sessions that were videotaped, taking place during the afternoon and the evening, and then continuing until the early morning hours of June the 5th, we're talking about 12 hours, continuing to 14 hours, continuing to 16 hours of questioning, interrogating. During these interviews, the FBI repeatedly pressured Hamid to admit that he had attended a terrorist training camp during his visit to train for jihad. And over again, Hamid denied. Until in the early morning hours of June the 5th, Hamid finally confirmed that he had attended a camp to train for jihad. Then after making this statement, Hamid asked the FBI agents if he could go home now. Days later, June 2005, Hamid Hayat was arrested and charged with providing material support to terrorism and lying about it to FBI agents. The prosecution alleged that Hamid Hayat had spent the better part of 2 years at an al-Qaeda training camp in Pakistan, returning in 2005 with the intent to attack civilian targets in the United States. Hamid contended he was in Pakistan to engage and arrange a marriage. Hamid was the subject of the first terrorism trial in the state of California. And on April 25th, 2006, a jury voted to convict Hamid of 1 count of providing material support or resources to terrorism, i.e. himself, and 3 counts of making false statements to the FBI in matters related to international or domestic terrorism. Hamid was sentenced to 24 years in prison and 10 years supervised parole upon release. Hamid appealed his case to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was denied. However, in his appeal, one judge had a dissenting opinion. Judge Tashima, circuit judge, and I quote, said, to paraphrase a famous line, in this case, the government has concluded that it is not for the government to say what offense Hamid has committed, but it is satisfied that he committed some offense for which he should be punished. The case is a stark demonstration of the unsettling and untoward consequences of the government's use of anticipatory, and I'll put in preemptive or thought crime, close quotes, prosecutions as a weapon on the war on terrorism. So thought crimes, preemptive prosecution. Hamid had done nothing, is what he's saying. Hamid did nothing, never supported terrorism, never threatened anybody. And this judge is saying this is so preemptive that we just suspect him of doing something in the future and we put him behind bars. So he was against the opinion in the appeal. So now all of this that I just talked about, everything that we've learned about Hamid, happened without MLFA being involved in 2005, 2006, 2007. Hamid started serving his 24-year prison sentence. His own attorney filed the appeal, which was denied, not MLFA. But MLFA learned in 2014 about the facts in Hamid's case. And after careful review, we were concerned that justice had not been served because we learned that Hayat's Sixth Amendment rights were violated by the defense put on by an inexperienced lawyer. He hired a lawyer who had never before selected a jury or tried a criminal case in federal court. That's who defended Hamid. And there were that the terrorism camps, training camps, that Hamid confessed to attending while in Pakistan did not operate during that time period. And we learned that his attorney never interviewed or called numerous witnesses in Pakistan who could vouch for his whereabouts during his entire stay, and that he never attended any camp. So MLFA decided to fund the expenses to have a senior federal litigation attorney file what's called the 2255 habeas petition to request a mistrial in Hamid's case. So we went to work, and after 6 years battling and battling and battling, alhamdulillah, in 2019, a judge recommended the conviction be overturned, citing an ineffective legal defense for Hamid, whose defending lawyer had never previously served in a criminal case in a federal court. The recommendation also cites a coerced confession obtained by the FBI, in which a former FBI agent described as the sorriest confession he had ever seen. And then what was one of the nation's highest profile post 9/11 terrorism cases fully unraveled when the federal prosecutor said they will not retry the case or continue to pursue any charges against Hamid. Alhamdulillah. Hamid Hayat was set free to go back home to his family, to his loved ones in Lodi, California. An innocent Muslim regained his freedom after 14 years. Now let me pause here and remind everyone why it's so important to always have an attorney present when you speak with the FBI or law enforcement agencies. If Hamid would simply have requested an attorney to be present with him, Allahu Alam, all of this could have been avoided. Hamid paid 14 years of his life for this mistake. Please don't let it be in vain. We can all learn from his experience. Always get a lawyer. Allah promises us that with every hardship, there's ease. Alhamdulillah, with experience, dedication, and patience, justice prevailed. Hamid wins, MLFA wins, the Muslim community wins. Again, MLFA is on the front lines of justice, protecting our rights and our liberties when and where it matters most. Promises made, promises kept. Thank you for watching. Assalamu alaikum.